And welcome back to the weekly market recap where we go over this week's market while keeping it as simple as possible. Now, this week, the market was a little bit lethargic, anticipating the huge events that are actually going to happen next week in the market. But before we get into that, let's talk about what actually happened this week. And unfortunately, we did not receive that much economic data. So let's look to the top 500 companies in the United States in the S&P 500. If you look at this chart above, you'll see the S&P 500 was basically flat this week, slightly down with no new economic data. But we had three huge events to happen this week that I have to let you guys know about. Now, the first big news was Donald Trump announced a 35% tariff on Canada. And that's a huge amount. And remember, back in the beginning of April, I showed you guys that when Donald Trump had announced all the tariffs on all these different countries, the stock market went down and went down fast. So you would think that this time the stock market dropped as well. But Donald Trump announced that those tariffs for Canada won't go through until August the 1st. And you have to remember the narrative that the media is saying, especially the Wall Street Journal, with the taco trade, meaning that Trump is going to threaten those tariffs, but he's never going to actually impose them. He's going to go back on those. So again, that's going to be a major story to see exactly if those tariffs go through. Now, the second biggest news actually came from Jamie Dimon, and Jamie Dimon is the CEO of JP Morgan Chase. And he gave two very interesting viewpoints. And he said, first, the mass deportation actually might be hurting Americans because a lot of the migrants are filling jobs that the normal American do not actually want to work in. For example, hospitality field, a lot of restaurants are now finding it hard to actually find workers to work in those fields. And as well as farmers, a lot of farmers actually hire the migrants to pick crops. And a lot of Americans do not want to work jobs where they're picking crops. And they're saying that the farmers are going to have to pay more money to have people to pick those crops. Now, the extra cost that the farmers are going to have to pay in wages is going to get pushed down to the American consumer like me and you. So again, that's going to be a very interesting thing to look at. As well, Jamie Dimon said with tariffs and everything that's going on, that honestly inflation might be going up and the Fed might have to increase interest rates. And that's a very interesting topic because everybody's talking about rates going down, but what if rates go up? That could have a very nasty effect on the stock market. Now, the last major news actually come from cryptocurrency land and Bitcoin. Bitcoin hit a new all-time high of 119,000 per coin. And right now, Bitcoin is at a major resistance level. So this week and next week to Sunday, we need to see if we get a confirmation signal, because if we do, Bitcoin can go all the way up to 125,000 to 130,000. And if we don't, Bitcoin could sell off, and it can sell off in a major way. So again, if you're a Bitcoiner, you need to see if we can get that confirmation signal next Sunday to see if Bitcoin is still up or not. Like I was saying earlier, next week's going to be a huge week for market because we're going to receive new data. And first, we're going to receive inflation data, which is such a big deal with CPI and PPI. Again, CPI is the consumer's inflation gauge and PPI is the business inflation gauge. And that's so important because if inflation is up, we're not going to be able to bring interest rates down. And again, that's a huge topic. As well as major earnings season starts next week. Well, first we'll receive earnings from some of the biggest banks in the United States. And with those, we'll see what is the real buying power of the American citizens. As well, the first major tech earnings are going to show next week with Netflix and Taiwan Semi. So again, next week is going to be a very crucial week, and I will give you guys all the information. Again, this is the weekly market recap. I'll see you guys next week. Peace.